Hello and thank you for joining our training today on DSC and Cantech integration. This is the One Tyco Masters program and my name is Greg Harmon and today I'll be taking you through how to sell the integration between DSC and Cantech. When I'm talking to customers about the integration, I'm trying to key in usually on 3 points. Number one, how we can use this integration to help reduce false alarms. Second, we have a brand new feature called monitored access. So how we can utilize the intrusion system to monitor the access control system against exception events. And then how we can simplify the user experience by giving the customer one interface and one database to manage. First thing that I'm going to take you through is just a quick example. I sold a very large end user with a few hundred locations on the DSC integration with Cantech, and we sold it on this principle. They were having a huge issue with false alarms, and the idea would be that they had a facility manager responsible for arming and disarming their locations. So they would come in before everybody else, they would swipe their card, and they would arm or disarm the alarm partition. And the problem was that when that facility manager slept in or got stuck in traffic or didn't show up, or even just had a sick day or a vacation day, didn't schedule somebody to go in and do the arming and disarming, an employee would show up and set off a false alarm. They'd walk in, they'd hear the buzzing of the keypad, and they wouldn't know what to do. They wouldn't know what code to punch in, who to call, and all that sort of stuff. So the problem in that scenario would be facility manager doesn't show up, an employee does, expecting the system to be disarmed, and they set off a false alarm. The problem there is you're running false dispatches, which can be very expensive. What we did with the integration in that particular scenario is we set it up so that it required the authentication or the verification for arming and disarming to happen outside of the door. So rather than have the facility manager swipe through the front door, go over to the keypad, and disarm the alarm system, Cantech was now responsible for authenticating that person and sending the disarm down to the DSC system. So when a facility manager would sleep in at this point, rather than having an employee show up, swipe in, and have to disarm at the DSC keypad, if the partition behind the door they were trying to access was armed, we would give them an access denied. So we wouldn't allow them into the area to arm or disarm the system. We did that outside of the door to eliminate the possibility of a false alarm. Now this is the way that this particular end user wanted to configure the integration, but it is flexible. So you do have the option as well to give the employee the ability to arm and disarm by a card swipe as well. So when they get to the door, if the partition isn't armed, you could allow them to swipe in and disarm the alarm system rather than locking them out of the building. So it is flexible. This is how this particular end user wanted it configured though. The big benefit for customers, especially if you've got lots of sites, is false alarms can be very expensive. Usually you're being charged by police departments or guard services $100 to $300 for a dispatch. A lot of municipalities are cracking down now, and they're saying if we have a false alarm, you can have one, but on the second one we're cutting off your service, or you have three strikes and you're out. So this reducing the false alarms not only saves you money, but can potentially prevent you from having your service cut. One of the other benefits of integrating DSC with Cantech is the fact that we can synchronize events. If you look at a standard intrusion panel, typically you can store 500 events on board before the events start getting overwritten. With Cantech, you can store 20,000 events on the controller, but within the EntraPass software, that number expands to a virtually limitless amount. Those events can allow us to do a lot of things, including triggers. So for the next part, we're going to talk about triggers. A lot of those triggers focus on video integration. So just to highlight, if you didn't watch our first module, Cantech supports full integration with Exact and American Dynamics. Not only does it support full integration, but it also does that at zero charge, zero upfront licensing for exact integration, and there's zero ongoing SLA software licensing agreements with Exact or American Dynamics. So a customer can have a fully integrated system with DSC and on the video side Exact or AD, and it doesn't cost them anything in addition to make that integration happen. So within the DSC events, we can pull every event that happens in DSC into Cantech. It could be everything from arming and disarming. There's really no limit on what comes in. It's everything that happens on DSC comes into the Cantech system. But I've listed a few things here that I find end users find to be important. Panic alarms. So we can create triggers off of panic alarms. If a motion detector or a door goes into alarm, we can create triggers from there as well. Panel low batteries, AC failure, communication failures, we can use those to trigger other events as well. What would we want to trigger with all of these events? Under triggered actions, we can have video pop up. So if there's a guard sitting at a station and somebody presses a panic button on the DSC system, maybe it's City Hall, and for whatever reason the receptionist at the front desk presses the panic button, we can have video pop up on that guard's screen. We can also create a pre and post clip. So when they press that button, we can create a 15 or a 20-second clip, 10 seconds before, 10 seconds after, or whatever time parameters you want to apply. Also, if somebody's pressing a panic button on the alarm system, if a camera is set up with scaled down frame rate and scaled down resolution, we probably want to bump that recording quality up to the maximum that camera will support. Video vault in that exact same scenario will allow us to take the clip. So from a panic button, we can take the clip and push it off to a network attached storage or move it off site entirely. And then finally, we can do email alerts. So things like panel low battery, AC failure, loss of network. We can have the DSC system send an email alert either to the end user or to the integrator indicating a service ticket's required. Also very important with the integration is the synchronization of users. So when we do the integration between Cantech and DSC, we're talking about one card database, one code database. So when we create a user in EnterPass, the card swipe is what is going to trigger the DSC system to arm or disarm. When we say code database, if we present a card and punch in a code on a Cantech reader, that could also be what pushes down that disarm if we want two-factor authentication for a user. Big benefit to this, one click to add, suspend, or remove users. So if I've got somebody that's got access to 50 of our buildings, that's 50 different alarm panels and potentially dozens of Cantech controllers. One click can remove that person from being able to arm and disarm, as well as lock and unlock doors. If you look at the alternative with DSC, you have to establish a connection at each alarm panel, go into the code that you want to remove, and remove it. It can take a long time, even with batch programming. At the bottom there, it shows card and code for best practices, and this is what we try to get people in the habit of pushing as a standard. If you present a card to a reader, if the partition behind the reader or the door is armed, Cantech can be configured so that it waits for a code in that scenario. So let's say somebody drops a card in a parking lot, somebody picks the card up. If it's the end of the day and nobody's on site, that person could potentially present their card and unlock and disarm the partition. By forcing card and code in that scenario, the person picks up the card, presents it, it waits for a code, and that person doesn't gain entry to the partition. If you think about it the other way, somebody comes in the morning, the partition is armed, they present their card, and then it waits for a code. They punch in their code to disarm. Once it's disarmed, the next person who comes in after them will just have to present a card to get in. So you can force that to be card and code on the second swipe in, but at a very minimum, we like dual authentication when the door is unlocking and the partition is being disarmed. If it's just a door unlock, usually people just want a swipe to make that action happen. Another advantage of integrating DSC with Cantech is the virtual keypad. So the virtual keypad exists for Power Series and Maxis, and what it allows you to do is virtually perform any command that you would from being in front of the keypad in person. So rather than having to drive to site or pull up, ask the customer to go in front of their keypad and hit buttons for you, the virtual keypad can be pulled up within Entrapass or Entrapass Web, so our workstation or our thin client. And the virtual keypad allows you to do everything that you would want to do on site. You can go into installer programming, you can add and remove user codes, check status, so if you want to know if the partitions are armed or disarmed. You can view troubles in the diagnostic section and see if you have a low battery or AC failure. Really anything you would want to do locally, you can now do remotely from the virtual keypad. The virtual keypad is available with Power Series and Maxis. It is coming to Neo, not there quite yet. But if you look at our mobile app, Entrapass Go, or our web-delivered app, Entrapass Web, you do have the capability to arm and disarm and view zone and partition status for Power Series, Maxis, and Neo in a new graphic interface. It's not a virtual keypad, but it's a graphic interface. It's a lot easier to use, a lot more user-friendly for your end users. Now, one of the benefits that the new DSC Neo brings that Power Series and Maxis do not have is the idea of virtual zones. So virtual zones allow us to do monitored access control. So Cantech can trigger up to 32 virtual zones on a DSC Neo panel, and they will take up a zone slot. So if you have a 64 zone panel, if you want to use 32 virtual zones, they will take up one of those 64 zones. If it's 128 panels, same thing applies. 32 of the zones are going to be taken up by virtual. We can use these virtual zones to utilize a Cantech door input on a KT400 or a KT1 and virtually push it to the Neo. So if I have a wire running from the front door to my KT400 to do door position status for the access control component, that door contact status can also be pushed virtually down to the DSC system without having to run a second wire to tell the DSC system if the door is secure, if the door is open, or if the door is an alarm. But where the integration really stands out is if a customer really wants to manage or I should say monitor the access control against exception events or suspicious events, that's where the Neo integration really shines. So if there's a door held open, door forced open, access denied, panel tamper, events like that, we can take those suspicious events and use a virtual zone to call out to the central station using the DSE Power Series Neo communicator. The difference between this and how it's done traditionally, if I have a door forced open or door held open, we're having an alert pop up within Entrapass, and I can even set up that to email your end user. So if I have a door, let's say an access denied, I can email an end user, say we had an access denied on the front door or the vault door or whatever the door might be. With virtual zones, that alarm can be transmitted through the Neo to the central station. So rather than being an email alert, your central station operator gets the alert, they pick up the phone, and then they start the call list. They call the first person on the list. If they don't answer, they call the second person on the list. Finally, they get a hold of somebody, they start making notes and perform an audit so that when you go back and you want to investigate what happened when we had that access denied, the central station, an impartial third party, has got notes. Well, we called this person, got a hold of them, and here's what they told us. Okay, monitored access control brings an opportunity to increase the value of the recurring revenue that you're selling to your customers for monitoring the alarm and access control piece. So the next video that we're going to do is going to be on the DSE Neo and why you want to standardize on DSE Neo for your commercial applications going forward. But I just wanted to cover a couple of key points in the meantime of why we want to go with Cantech and Neo as opposed to, say, a Maxis system, because there's a ton of legacy Maxis stuff out there. First and foremost, the benefit is the wireless on Neo. The wireless is it ranges in the kilometers. It is very robust. It's also completely encrypted. So for commercial applications, the wireless is encrypted. The bus itself is also encrypted. DSC is using 128-bit AES encryption for both. So for commercial applications, it's significantly more secure. Neo is also the product for DSC that will be its backbone for years to come. So if you go with a Neo versus a Maxis, the Neo is going to have a much longer lifespan than the Maxis if you're deploying it for a customer. Some of the other benefits, Cantech is a lot more scalable than Maxis. You've also got access to mobile apps. So if you go with Maxis and Neo, you can use the Enterpass Go to view zone status, partition status, arm and disarm. You can also tie it into our hosted and managed platform for the Tyco hosted and managed. It allows with Cantech video integration, so we can do our video pop-up, we can do our adaptive video recording quality and all those benefits we talked about earlier. We also support multi-swipe, so if you want to swipe your card 2 or 3 times to trigger a partition to ARM, we can do that as well. And again, if you look at the scalability, the Maxis is capped out at 32 doors. When it comes to Cantech, I've got tens of thousands of doors, but our virtual limit is literally in the millions. So you get sort of the future product, a lot more robust, a lot more secure. And then you get a full-fledged access control system on the Cantech side by going Cantech and Neo. And if you break the two down, if you look at what it costs, it's approximately 15% more to go Cantech Neo versus Maxis. But again, all those benefits you get that you wouldn't have gotten with the Maxis. You show them the mobile app, you talk about the scalability, you talk about the features that they get with an actual full-fledged access control product. And it's very comparable in terms of the price between the two. Putting it together is very easy. So with the Neo, their communicators, you want to order the part that ends in R. So there's the 3G2080R, the TL280R, and the TL803GR. So whether it's their cellular communicator, their IP communicator, or their cell IP combo communicator, all three of them, as long as they end in R, will come with a port on them to do the integration to Cantech and the cable to plug it into one of our controllers. You can plug it into either our KT400 or our KT1 PCB. There's an RS-232 port on it, so no additional equipment needs to be ordered if you're doing integration with the Neo, unlike Power Series and Maxis. If you are doing it with Power Series and Maxis, the Maxis requires a KT4401, so an additional module, and that'll go from the the COM bus of the Maxis to the 4401, and from there to the RS-232 port on our KT400 or KT1 PCB. And on Power Series, we're going to go into the KT-IT100, and from the KT-IT100 to the KT1 PCB or KT400 RS-232 port. Okay, so with Neo, the communicator order the part that ends in R, and then if you're going Maxis or Power Series, order the appropriate integration module. Okay, so just to sum up, here's a list of what you get. Arming and disarming, you can do it through our interface for all three platforms. You can view zone status, partition status as well. Graphic maps, so you can drag and drop zones and partitions onto the graphic maps in all three scenarios. We can do video triggers in all three scenarios, email triggers, synchronized events and users. Virtual keypad is not yet available on the Neo. It's coming soon. The Neo, however, does support virtual zones, which gives you an additional recurring revenue stream to offer to your customers. So virtual zones will allow you to communicate those critical events that are happening on your access control system to your central station. So that's a quick overview of the DSC integration with Cantech, some of the features and benefits, and how to position it with your customer. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you on the next one.